Christians can't accept that Christianity is idolatry because it means that anyone who died Christian, even if they committed no other sin, would die guilty of the mortal sin of idolatry, which is quite a frightening thought if you think of all these generations and centuries of Christians. The monumental nature of the fraud is really quite terrifying to think of. If all these poor people who died Christian and were sent to hell because idolatry is a mortal sin, were sent to hell by their monarchs who forced them to practice idolatry. They practiced the idolatry of worshipping an executed blasphemer, and knowing all this, they continued nevertheless. So what does it mean? I mean, assuming my definition and assessment is correct, then what does it mean for all these Christians who died Christian? They must have all thought they were going to heaven. They thought they'd been assured that if they followed certain rules, they were, going to get to heaven, and then they discovered that the rules that their monarch made up, which they got from the Pope, were all wrong to begin with, going all the way back to the 4th century. So there will, I suppose, be a Christian section of hell. And this leads us to ask ourselves if there's a special, Hindu section or Buddhist section or something like that. And it always intrigues me about these difficult issues because, what would a perfectly moral and compassionate God do? And I think what he would do is this. He would say to them, all these people these deceased people, I should say, whose souls have met their maker and they were expected to give an account for themselves, and then they meet God and discover he's not Jesus. And I mean, what excuse are they going to offer? I guess the obvious one would be, surely, God, you didn't expect us all to be burnt at the stake. Like Michael Servetus for denying the Trinity, and God might say, well, perhaps that's a bit too much to expect, and so I'll give you another chance. So, what religion would you choose for your parents if I were to give you the chance of living another life? What religion would you choose, assuming you want to get to heaven ASAP? And isn't there really one correct answer? Isn't there? I mean, it's obvious to me. It's not going to be Judaism. It's not going to be Hinduism, because the whole idea of Hinduism, Buddhism, is because it's got reincarnation, and reincarnation means, well, you have to keep coming back until you learn all your lessons, and that could take a very long time to get to heaven. But once you're already a Muslim, then you're at the final lap, so to speak. The final, what do you call it, level in your video game. So it's obvious to me what you should choose, unless, I mean, I did know a Catholic who said, oh no, he'd choose Catholicism again. And I thought, well, that's a bit extreme. And then I realized he didn't even believe in God or the afterlife at all. Or maybe he half believed it, but didn't believe in hell. A lot of Christians seem to think that hell has been abolished, and I don't know who they think might have abolished it and whether it was made official. As far as I know, nobody actually dared to officially and publicly abolish hell. They just kind of salami sliced it away, but it was never, it was never official. But what about these Jews and Muslims who never bothered telling Christians that Christianity is idolatry? I mean, what do you think Jews were chosen by God to do? To just annoy Gentiles? I suppose they would annoy any Gentile who were minded to envy Jews just because of their status of being God's chosen people. But then, if you think what Jews were chosen to do, you wouldn't envy them because they are set a higher standard and they are also punished more harshly. So I wouldn't want to be Jewish at all. And whatever status you think Jews have, it's only imagined, really. I'm sure a lot of Jews would rather not be Jewish. And in fact, half of them don't bother being Jewish, and they are not observant and are basically secular, liberal Jews who are said by the ultra-Orthodox rabbis to incite anti-Semitism because of their sins. You may remember me telling you that I like the Quran. I think it's the best available guide to humanity because of its brilliant draftsmanship. So with all these powerful religious groups, obviously a lot of people want to join in just to, enjoy the status and opportunities that being a member of a powerful religious group gives you. So you would expect a lot of them to not really believe and not really follow the rules, but they still want to enjoy the benefits, like a non-member of a exclusive club, not wanting to pay the exclusive membership fees and do whatever is necessary to keep the club going, but just be there to enjoy the club facilities without paying for them. And obviously you're going to get a few free riders in anything that is capable of being taken advantage of. And so Allah, if he exists, has dealt with them by saying hypocrites go to hell. So he's basically saying, don't think you'll get to heaven just because you seem to be following the rules correctly. Oh no. Because if you're a hypocrite and pretend to believe, but you don't really, you'll be one of those Jews and Muslims who will always be very creative in finding excuses not to support or follow the principles of your religion, and you go to hell, which is just brilliant in my view. So the Torah doesn't mention hypocrisy. It doesn't say hypocrites go to hell, but it has many restrictions and punishments, but hypocrisy is just a thought crime, right? It's thought crime and speech crime, and if God exists, you're going to be punished for it. And so Christians may be given another chance, and and they would be asked this question about, if you really do want to get to heaven, which is the most direct way? And if you know what it is, which religion should you choose? And Christians still alive might wish to consider, before their account is closed, how best to expedite their journey to heaven. And this is my suggestion. Not that I know anything really about it, but this is how the system is supposed to work, isn't it? And for these Jews and Muslims who never told Christians that Christianity is idolatry, they get punished too. It really is a stupendously brilliant and complete system. And now I will read the comments. There are several Christian views of hell. The thing is, all we know is that it's an unpleasant place. I know Muslims argue with each other about whether hell is eternal. I wouldn't know, but the point is, surely, you get good and you get bad. So aren't you instinctively going to choose what is good? You want to choose the better, not the worse, surely. Are Jews really chosen? You could say they are chosen to be light unto nations, and blah blah. Or you could say they were chosen to be made an example of, because whenever they don't follow their rules, bad stuff happens to them. So, maybe the analytical Gentile, the observant Gentile might think, well, it would appear that Jews suffer when they don't follow their rules. And maybe we too would suffer if we don't follow the rules for us. Sorry, I'm yawning a bit, but I didn't get much sleep last night. Yongard asked, the real question is, if polytheist India doesn't want Islam and monotheist Europe does not want Islam, do South American monotheists want Islam? Now, you see, it doesn't matter what they want. If America adopts it, then everyone will. This is the core of my brilliant plan, because America's global hegemon, everybody will be copycatting America, and I would have thought Americans would want the rule of law. They don't want, surely they don't want Trump saying, I am the moral standard of America. Isn't that setting it a bit low, considering the number of lies he's already told? But the point about religion is, you can make a case for it, can't you? You can say, well, religion is obviously useful, whether or not God exists. Religion is what gives you morality, because moral principles come from religious principles, and religious principles come from religion. And if you want to compare the different, if you want to make a market comparison of the 5 world religions, it's really quite easy when you compare the status of these religious groups. And obviously the Hindus and Buddhists are nowhere at all. And, again, there are only three Abrahamic religions. We don't want to be Jews because it's too restrictive. And, if you're going to take the whole thing seriously, you had better avoid Christianity, because Jesus was executed for blasphemy. Christians are supposed to worship and execute a blasphemer. They've been doing it a long time, and they've also been suffering quite a lot, really, with their religious wars. The European wars of religion, World War I, World War II, and possibly World War III. So, and we also know that even though it was the baby of, Roman Catholicism is a baby of the Roman Emperor Constantine, and he only adopted Christianity in order to prolong the life of his empire, but it still declined and fell. And we also know from the first 7 ecumenical councils that they kept changing the rules and refining the narrative, and even now they're doing it. They're still doing it, and nobody really knows, what a true Christian is supposed to believe. But with Islam, it is. With Islam and Judaism, it's rather easier because of the 13 principles of Judaism. And I've been telling Muslims, look, instead of your Aqidah wars and, asking each other what kind of Muslim you are, you should move towards greater Muslim unity by making a point not to ask each other what kind of Muslim you are, whether you're Sunni or Shia, that kind of thing. And you can just use the 13 principles of Judaism and adapt it for Islam, and that's it. No more arguing about jinn and whatever Daniel Hockey can't do, and the Wahhabis against him were arguing about. I mean, it was so ridiculous. I mean, I listened to that 7-hour. I didn't listen to it all. I knew it was 7 hours, but it just went on and on and on about whether it's shirk to kill some animals to sacrifice it for the king, or something ridiculous like that. I mean, nobody really cares, do they? It's theoretical, hypothetical scenario, and they wanted to condemn each other for heresy over it, and scholarly opinion has historically been divided. So they're arguing about very silly things, and of course I am saying that my secular Quranism is better than their Sharia, and I guess they don't like me saying that, and they can't prove me wrong because their caliphate has crashed and burnt, and they can't say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, because actually I know where all the bodies of Islam are buried. And they can't deny that the Ottoman Empire was dismantled, meaning that the caliphate was dismantled, and Muslims are so divided now that they're not even talking about restoring it, and they don't even know how. But I know how. I have a plan, and I've actually mentioned it before, but I won't bore you with it on this occasion. But yes, I've got a plan for that too. I have the answer to the JQ. I have the answer to the IQ, I suppose. Or should I call it the CQ? But that's a Christian question. The caliphate question would be my CQ. But anyway, what I'm saying is that the Quran does not let hypocrites get away with their hypocrisy, and that's what I like about it.